coming up this week during the conservatory, we have a performance of Gluck's Iphigenie. Did I do it? Was that okay? Okay. I sing German rather than French. Coming up on October the 7th, Nats Boston. Those of you who would like to submit your students for the vocal competition, those applications are due October 28th. Thank you so much. Excellent. And Nats Boston also has an event coming up that we're co-sponsoring with Nats Rhode Island. Marina Gilman, who's going to be giving a presentation on mind-body connection in singing. So without further ado, I'm going to reintroduce Ken, and Ken will bring our first singer up. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you can relax momentarily because I thought what I would do is start with a brief, I'll try to keep it brief, little body mapping exercise for all of us to try together. But then I hope to draw on some with the singers. And then the purpose of this is we have to make a transition from, if you were here this afternoon, from all this knowledge about how things need to behave to get the best acoustic result to how do we kinesthetically inspire that for a young singer. Because, you know, you can't just say, well, why don't you tune your first moment to your second harmonic? Yeah. you have to translate this into behavior, and there's, I don't know if he's still here or not, very told that I interacted with on Skype. Anyway, he asked the question, you know, what do you say? And you can get very creative. Once you know physically what you're after, where it's supposed to happen and why it's supposed to happen there, then you can use whatever creative and visual observation that you have as a teacher to help stimulate the result that you want. So, excuse me, in January, in the January NYSTA e-journal, if you know what that is, New York Singing Teachers Association voice prints, there will be an article on this little exercise. And I forget even what it was called, a two-room analogy or something like that. So here's how I describe to my singers one of the ways. I use lots of things, but I'll just give you this one. Good. I say your vocal tract is a tube that you can conceive of. You know what body mapping is? You conceive of how your body's put together and how it works. And we did a little bit of body mapping when we remapped the back of the throat wall to where it actually is in front of the ears, remapped the way the tongue actually behaves so we can get it up the throat. So this is along those lines. So it's a tube that you can conceive of as if it's two rooms. And it's a vertical room from your larynx up to your palate in back that is divided from a front room by a tongue hump, wherever the tongue has a little bit of a rounding bulge. So you've got this vertical back room there. There's a tongue hump that creates a little bit of a narrowing or a threshold between the so-called back room and the front room. Then the front room is from the tongue hump to the lips. So you have these two spaces that you're playing with. And then there's several pieces to this that are useful in that equation. First of all, I want you to always perceive, and this is subjective perception, varies a little bit from individual, that you have two rooms. If you lower the tongue too much in your setup, all of a sudden it will feel like you have one room that runs this way. There's like one big room there. You don't feel any. But if you always have some sense, however slight, and in your most open vowels, it will be subtle, that there's a little bit of a threshold between the back room and the front room, so that your tongue is not maximally pulling down, but it's staying as close as it can, per vowel and pitch, to its relaxed posture. And by the way, the tongue's relaxed posture, since it attaches to the inside back of your chin, it feels more like a this than a that. You let go of it, it wants to be hanging out like that here instead of, you feel that? So there's always a little sense of narrowing between that back room and the front room. Another piece to that. So here's some advice about the back room. I always want the back room to be as tall as it comfortably can be, so that the floor is quite subtle feeling. It doesn't have to be pulled down, but it should be quite settled feeling. And the ceiling of that back room is quite high. And as life would have it, I wake up in the night. And as I'm lying in bed, trying to figure out how to fall back asleep again, I do nerdy voice pedagogy stuff. And I'm clicking like Goddess and playing with shapes, you know. That usually means I have to go to the other bedroom because my wife's there. Anyway, so last night, as I was thinking about this back room thing, I thought, you know, it's almost like the back room has a loft. This tall, narrow room actually has a loft, you know, up above, right? And maybe a basement underneath. So it's from way down there to where this is a very tall back room. Secondly, when it's really open, it feels narrow front to back. It does not feel wide front to back, it feels narrow. When it's actually quite open. So if you feel wide open, you back your tongue up. If it feels narrow front to back, your tongue is relaxed and fronted. And it's actually open, in spite of the fact that you don't feel it much. Third, I think that this is all, this is my creative, okay, this isn't science, this is my creative studio stuff. I feel like we each have a sense, a location of our sense of personal agency. What do I mean by that? I'm standing here talking to you, and I don't feel like I'm talking to you from my belly button. I don't feel like I'm talking from my left shoulder. I feel like I'm talking to you from somewhere about right here. It's near where my sight is, my hearing, my center of balance. My interacting with the world is sort of psychologically from here. So the location of my sense of personal agency is pretty near the top of the back room. That's the point of that. So I'm here, kind of near the top of the back room. When you sing, don't go into the front room. You stay back in the top of the back room. Don't try to go out into the front room. Stay in the top of the back room. So this is how I use some of this silly imagery to help keeps the alignment. It helps a lot of things. Next, the distance, I already said this before, but the distance from the front door of the front room to the back wall of the back room should always feel short. If it feels long, you have basically backed your tongue up. And you'll see, you've seen that look in the studio? Not a good look. Short front to back. That keeps your tongue where it needs to be, keeps your tall back room, so on and so on. And another point, the front room is your sunroom. It's all about light. It's all about brightness and ring. You get all of your depth from having a nice tall back room with a low basement and a high ceiling. So you do not need to color your voice in the front room. I don't need to do anything in the front room to sort of kind of cover or color the sound. The front room is all about letting the ring, let the sun shine, let it ring on out. Now, if it's a lip-rounded vowel, that's particularly true for the non-lip-rounded vowels. So if I'm doing E, A, I, Y, any of the non-lip-rounded vowels, I want to feel like I'm not doing anything with the lips to cover it over. I'm getting the lips out of the way. If I need more warmth at that point in the equation, it's already too late. The warmth is from back here, not by, I'm not using the front room to warm my tone. It'll interfere with clarity of diction, ring, lots of things like that. But in the lip-rounded vowel, I don't want to open the front room, because I actually want all of my vowels to be articulated as close to the relaxed tongue position as possible. Yow, yow, yow. So you don't see a lot of movement. Yow, 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 Yo, 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 yo. Yo, yo, yo. Yo, yo, yo. If I really keep it right on the inside, all through the middle voice, I don't need to make big shape changes. And on the lip-rounded vowels, oh, ooh, it feels, rather than like I'm making a big hollow at the front of my mouth and then lip-rounding heavily over it, which will kill the ring, it feels like I've got a very small round tube for those lip-rounded vowels in the front room. And then my lips are simply a continuation of the same dimension. So I'm not making a big hollow in the front of my mouth and then heavily lip-rounding over it. Because that also makes it feel long front to back. It's a close tube sensation. And the lips are rounded, but they're just sort of continuing the rounding, the sort of sensation of the rounding that I already had. So it's O, U, as opposed to O, U, where I drop my jaw further, create a hollowing and overcover it. O, U, yeah, you know. Then things stay ringy deep. I get my chiaro scuro timbre. I think that's most of what I had to say about the two ring metaphor at this point. A lot of ring, yeah. We'll go with that for now. And I'll adjust that as we go. So let's have our first singer come up and sing for us. This is Madison Fitzpatrick, who is 17, is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow, good for you. Thank you for being brave and coming and singing for us. And she's going to sing Weep You No More by Roger Quilter.
That's great.
What I think I want to do is maybe do a little bit of vocalizing to just sort of play with where the sound is and see what happens with it. So I will bump you from the keyboard briefly. And I'm wondering the best place, how about this, to do this. Why don't you try standing on that side of the piano, if you don't mind. So you're facing out as I do this. And I want to do it an E vowel. I didn't get into this, but with inu, because the first form of the inu is so low, women need to start opening E and U really early, because you'll be in that very soon. And she has a lot of warmth in her sound. It's either studied in, or however, you know, I don't know where that all started, but a lot of good things going on in that regard. But I want to play with that to make sure that all of the warmth we're getting is primarily from here, and not a little bit